This video is centered around the evening I met Nelson Mandela. I'm going to call it Face to Face with Mandela. And all of us know who Mandela is. The great leader. He was one of the great leaders of South Africa. But anyhow, I had completed my writings of a book on my travels along the coast of West Africa. After my book signing party, I decided to take on a project as a museum attendant at a museum called the Manil Collection. The founder of the museum was Ms. Dominique de Menil, a very elegant, gracious, and free-spirit soul. To me, she was a kindred spirit. The public saw her as a philanthropist. After writing, I needed a break away from the pen and paper and traveling to gather my thoughts. If any of you have followed my monologues on Ustream or YouTube, then you understand where my head was for doing something different. The museum was the perfect place to recollect when I moved back home to Houston from the Monterey Peninsula. And Mrs. D. Menil was very supportive of her employees. It was a nice and relaxing environment to work in. It was a good massage for my mind. There I decided to write my first play. It was performed at a big venue in Houston. And on to sponsors like University of Houston and performers at the well-known venue, the Old Music Hall, downtown. Ms. Dominique de Menil was one of the first ones to walk through the door to attend my plays and always inspired me to continue. On my second play, not only did she support it, but gave generously. One evening, everyone at the museum were preparing for a very distinguished and important visitor. The museum was crowded with city and state law officials and the CIA. I was wondering what was going on. Sniffing dogs seemed like they had invaded the place. CIA had blocked off certain entrances into the museum. Even if the museum staff tried to enter, they would tell them to go around the other way. They were even on top of the roof. First time I had ever experienced security on that level. They had the local police, state police, and the CIA all for this visitor. We finally heard that Nelson Mandela was coming to the museum for a fundraiser for his organization sponsored by Mrs. Dominique de Menil and former President Carter. Their organization was called Carter Menil Foundation, which acknowledged every year throughout the world worthy organizations who contribute to the struggle for peace. I was excited, even though I knew I wouldn't have a chance to get anywhere near Nelson Mandela. But to me, just being in the same building with him would be an honor. Just maybe he would do a tour of the galleries. And if I'm lucky, just maybe he would come in my gallery. I wished. I'd heard that the governor of Texas, Ann Richardson, and the mayor of Houston were attending the event. It was going to be a historic day. Caterers were preparing the food, setting up the dining area for people attending. Finally, the sunset came and people started coming to the event early. Nelson Mandela hadn't arrived yet. As I was standing in the gallery talking to another attendant, the director of the museum begged for me to come. He said he wanted to have a word with me. I walked over to him and got the surprise of my life. Just like my first journey along the coast of West Africa, he asked me when Mandela arrived, would I escort and walk with him into the museum side by side. I was speechless. He wanted me to be the first to greet him before entering the museum. Again, as I mentioned in my monologue, doors always opened up for me since I had made that long journey to Nigeria. And now this. I can do nothing but accept the invitation. Come on now. Nelson Mandela. I was ecstatic. The director told me that he knew the experiences I've had with African people, and he wanted Nelson Mandela to feel comfortable when he arrived. He had read my book, The Whispering Call, and was impressed. As I stood outside the museum with the director, assistant director, and the CIA, a black limo pulled up to the curb. The driver got out and opened the passenger door. The CIA watched closely. My knees buckled a little. When I saw Nelson Mandela get out the limo, we stood there watching him walk toward us. I asked myself, was this really happening? As his steps got closer, my heart began beating a little faster. My eyes were wide open to witness this mingled, gray-headed, extraordinary leader walk toward me. His two aides was behind him, a young man and woman. As they approached, the director had told me to be the first one to greet him. He looked very tired from the long trip from Africa to the States, and I'm quite sure he had made many stops along the way. His aides smiled as they approached. I flashed back on those smiles that I remember on my long journey along the coast of West Africa. I greeted Mandela with a tight handshake and a big joyful smile. Welcome, Mr. Mandela. Hope you had a comfortable trip to the States. He responded with a big smile. The other company greeted and shook his hand. The director told me to continue walking with Mr. Mandela toward the entrance of the museum. We chatted a little as we walked toward the entrance. I told him that it was an honor to meet him, and I had heard so much about him as a leader of South Africa. I told him that I had been to West Africa before. He just smiled, and his young aides invited me to come to South Africa. That doors would always be open for me, they said. By this time, the doors opened to the museum, and there it was. Cameras were flashing, people were lined along the corridor, waving and smiling, and I was right in the mix of it all, walking side by side with an icon, Mr. Nelson Mandela. News media from all the television stations was shooting footage of Mandela. As we passed the crowd, people were calling his name softly. He wanted to see the African gallery, so we went there before continuing to the podium. The other attendants looked surprised to see me walking along with Mandela. I could hear their whispers as we passed them by with a big smile. This story would stay with me forever, just like the long journey to Nigeria. As we walked down the corridor, Ann Richards joined us, the governor of Texas at the time. Everybody was so focused on Nelson Mandela they hardly paid attention to Governor Richards. I remember the scene so well. She had to introduce herself to some people. Everybody was locked into Mr. Mandela. It was so funny. As I remember, we walked through the African gallery, everybody was around Mandela. Governor Ann Richards walked over with a Texas accent and said, "I'm Governor Ann Richards, Governor of Texas," and extended our hands to be sure. Time had come for him to be introduced. He walked up to the podium and I bid Nelson Mandela goodbye as he took the podium to deliver his speech that night. When I got home now, friends called and said they saw me with Nelson Mandela on television. At the time of excitement, all the pictures that were taken, that evening, I didn't have one historic walk with Nelson Mandela. Then the following week, I got news that they had a picture of me and Mandela walking together down the Cardinal. I was excited and prayed that I could get a picture made from the original copy. I hurried over to another part of the museum to see the picture, and there I was, just as plain as day, walking alongside of Mandela. They told me that they would make me a copy. When I asked about it later, they said they didn't have it anymore. I wonder what happened. I was shocked. I even called TV stations to get footage, but no luck. I couldn't believe with all the flash cameras and news media present, I couldn't find one person or thing with a picture of me and Mandela. Anyway, I don't want to get ahead of the story, so let me rewind to the next evening after the event at the Menil Collection Museum. I was invited to attend a luncheon with Nelson Mandela at St. Thomas University. Before he delivered his speech that afternoon, I had a chance to chat with him for the last time. One thing I asked him, "Do you remember me?" He smiled and said, "Sure I do. I met you yesterday. You escorted me into the art museum." And his age reminded me about visiting South Africa. They gave me their names and insisted that I come to South Africa. For me, the event of the two unforgettable evenings with Nelson Mandela would go down in my history memory. Carter Menil Foundation kicked out the fundraiser by donating $100,000 to the Nelson Mandela Organization. Again, destiny played a large part the evening I met Nelson Mandela. And still there is more to come. God bless.